I moved into my apartment in October. Ground floor, small building, cheap rent. I didn't know anyone in the area. I'd just started a new job in a new city, and the apartment was close to work, so it made sense. I liked it at first. I liked the quiet. I liked having my own space. I'm a pretty routine kind of person. Home by 7, cook something, watch TV, in bed by midnight. I don't go out much. I keep to myself. And for the first 11 days in that apartment, everything was completely normal. On the 12th night, I heard footsteps outside my bedroom window. The window faces a narrow alley between my building and the one next door. Not a path anyone really uses. It's barely wide enough for one person, and it leads nowhere useful. I told myself it was probably someone cutting through, taking a shortcut, whatever. I turned the TV up and forgot about it. But it happened again the next night. Same time. Around 11:30, slow, deliberate footsteps back and forth in that alley. I got up and looked through the gap in the curtain. The alley was empty, just shadows and concrete. I went back to bed. By the 4th night, something in me had changed. I wasn't dismissing it anymore. Something in my gut had moved from uneasy to genuinely afraid, and I couldn't explain why. The footsteps came again, right on schedule. And this time, they stopped, right outside my window. And they didn't move. For what felt like forever, there was just this presence, right on the other side of the glass, standing there in complete silence. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just lay there staring at the ceiling with my heart going absolutely insane in my chest. After maybe 10 minutes, the footsteps started up again and faded away down the alley. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single minute. On the 6th night, I put my phone near the window before I went to sleep and set it to record audio. I wanted proof that it was nothing. I wanted to listen back in the morning and feel stupid for being scared. I didn't feel stupid. What I heard in that recording, even now, thinking about it, makes my skin crawl. Footsteps in the alley, slow, unhurried, stopping directly outside my window. And then, in the silence that followed, a sound I can only describe as someone pressing their face against the glass. This faint, awful creak of pressure. And then a long, slow exhale, like someone breathing out right against the window. I sat on the edge of my bed for a long time after listening to that recording. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what this was. I still don't. I went to my landlord the next morning, and the look on his face when I started describing it, that look alone told me everything I needed to know. He wasn't surprised. He was uncomfortable in the way someone is uncomfortable when they've been dreading a conversation. He told me that the woman who had lived in my apartment before me, in that exact unit, that exact bedroom, had reported the same thing. Footsteps in the alley at night, something outside the window. She'd left after 3 months without much of an explanation. He'd hoped, I guess, that it had stopped. We reported it to the police. They checked the alley, found nothing. A few nights of patrol cars didn't change anything. Whoever it was knew how to stay hidden. I stayed 2 more weeks after that. I don't know why. I think part of me wanted to not let it win. I wanted to be the person who wasn't scared out of their own home by footsteps in an alley. But on the last night, my very last night in that apartment, though I didn't know it yet when I went to bed, I woke up at 3 in the morning to knocking on my window. 3 knocks. Slow and deliberate, not aggressive, not frantic, calm, patient. The kind of knock that says, I know you're in there. The kind of knock that says I can wait. I was packed and out of there by sunrise. I broke my lease. I lost my deposit. I didn't care. I still don't know who it was. I probably never will. And honestly, that's the part that gets me the most. Not knowing. Not knowing why. Not knowing if it was random or if I was specifically chosen. Not knowing if they're still out there, standing in some other alley, waiting outside some other window. I sleep on the 3rd floor now. I still check the locks twice before bed. I don't think that's ever going to change. I used to work nights at a warehouse, industrial storage facility on the edge of town. One of those massive buildings that goes on forever. Rows of steel shelving stacked up to the ceiling, motion sensor lights that click on in sections ahead of you as you walk. The kind of place where sound travels in weird ways. Where a door closing on the other side of the building sounds like it's right next to you. I'd been doing it for about 8 months. Me and a guy called Marcus. We had a good system. One of us monitored the cameras while the other did the walkthrough rounds. Then we'd swap. Having someone else there made it manageable. Made the dark feel less heavy. Then one Thursday in November, Marcus called in sick. And for the first time in months, I was alone in that building for the whole 8-hour shift. I told myself it was fine. I knew the building. I knew the sounds it made. The way the ventilation hummed at certain hours. The way the roof would creak when the temperature outside dropped. I'd done solo shifts before, early on. I was prepared. That's what I kept telling myself. I was prepared. I found the side door open at around 2 in the morning. Not wide open, just ajar. Maybe 3 inches. Enough to see a slice of the dark parking lot outside. It was a heavy fire door on the east wall near the loading bay, the kind that needs a key to open from outside. I was certain I'd checked it at the start of my shift. I check every door at the start of every shift. That's the job. I closed it, made sure it latched, and told myself I'd just been careless earlier. Continued my rounds. Everything else was normal. When I got back to the security desk and pulled up the camera feeds, I saw it. Camera 4. The one covering the far end of the warehouse near the loading bay. In the corner of the frame, near a cluster of shelving units, there was a figure. Just standing there, completely still, facing the camera, too far away to make out clearly, but unmistakably a person. Just standing there in the dark, watching. I went cold all over. I picked up the intercom and announced myself, told whoever was in there that they were on camera, that security knew they were there. Nothing. No movement. No response. The figure just stood there. I called the police, and while I waited, I kept my eyes on that screen. For 6 minutes, the figure didn't move a single inch. Then on the 7th minute, it was just gone. No movement I could see. One moment it was there, the next it wasn't. Like something had been switched off. 4 officers showed up and swept the entire building, every corridor, every storage bay, every dark corner behind every shelf. They found nobody. The building was empty. But in the back corner of the loading bay, the exact area that camera 4 didn't quite reach, they found something that made my stomach drop. Blankets, folded neatly into a pile, a backpack, empty food containers, the gas station kind, the kind you grab when you don't want anyone to see you buying a proper meal, a half-empty bottle of water, and a phone charger plugged into a wall socket that was positioned so low and so close to the shelving that you'd never notice it during a normal walkthrough. Someone had been living in that warehouse, not for a few days, based on everything they found. The officers estimated weeks, possibly longer. Every single night that Marcus and I had done our rounds, walked those corridors, checked those doors, someone had been in that building with us, watching our patterns, learning our schedule, staying just out of sight. I think about that a lot. The fact that for weeks, every time I walked through that warehouse feeling alone, feeling like it was just me and all that dark space, I wasn't alone at all. Someone was there, watching, waiting for me to pass, tucking back into the shadows. The police never found out who it was. I quit the next morning. I still work security. Different place, more staff, better camera. But every single time I walk into a room and the motion sensor clicks on and the light floods the space, I stop. I look at every corner. I listen before I move, because I know now what I didn't know before. Empty doesn't always mean empty. Me and my best friend had been planning this trip for months. Nothing fancy, just 2 nights in a cute cottage somewhere outside the city. We found the perfect place on Airbnb, a little house in the countryside, about 2 hours from home. Stone fireplace, clawfoot tub, good reviews. The host had been verified on the platform for years and had a 5-star rating. Everything about it looked perfect. We arrived on a Friday evening just as it was getting dark. Host wasn't there. He'd left the key in a lockbox and a welcome note on the counter pointing us toward the Wi-Fi and a list of local restaurants. We made dinner, opened a bottle of wine, sat in front of the fire. I remember thinking I couldn't have asked for a better start to the weekend. Everything was completely fine, right up until my friend woke me up at 2 in the morning. She was sitting up in bed when I opened my eyes, very still. The look on her face stopped my heart for a second. It was that specific kind of controlled fear, where someone is trying hard not to make a sound while also being absolutely terrified. She leaned close to me and whispered that she'd heard a door. Not the front door, not our bedroom door. Something further back in the house. A soft click, like a door being pulled carefully closed. We lay there and listened for 10 full minutes. Nothing. The cottage was quiet. We told each other it was the house settling. Old buildings do that. It was nothing. We went back to sleep. I wish we hadn't gone back to sleep. The next morning, everything seemed fine. Coffee, breakfast, a walk outside in the frost. I was starting to relax again. But when I came back in from the garden and walked through the kitchen, I stopped in the doorway. One of the dining chairs had been moved. I was certain, absolutely certain, that all 4 chairs had been tucked under the table when we went to bed. I'm the kind of person who notices things like that. But now one of them was pulled out, angled slightly away from the table, facing the hallway, facing the direction of the bedroom. I stood there staring at it for a long moment. Then I pulled it back under the table and didn't say anything to my friend. I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to ruin the trip. I really, really wish I had said something. That night I couldn't sleep. My friend went out easily, but I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling with this dread in my chest that I couldn't shake. I kept telling myself I was being irrational. I kept telling myself it was just a chair. I kept telling myself I was a grown adult in a rented cottage, and there was nothing to be afraid of. I was still awake at 2:45 in the morning when I heard the footsteps. They were in the hallway, right outside our bedroom door. Slow, deliberate footsteps on hardwood floor that I had no way of telling myself were anything other than what they were. I grabbed my friend's arm and squeezed hard. She was awake in a second. I put my finger to my lips. She heard it too. I watched her face change the moment she did. We both stared at the bedroom door. The footsteps got closer, and then they stopped, directly outside, right on the other side of that door. I don't know how long we sat there. It felt like forever. Neither of us moved or breathed. And then, finally, slowly, the footsteps moved away, down the hallway toward the back of the house. And then silence. We were dressed and out the front door in 4 minutes. We drove 2 hours home in the dark without stopping. I don't think either of us said more than 10 words the whole drive. I filed a complaint with Airbnb the next day and left a 1-star review explaining exactly what happened. The host replied that it was an old house and we had overactive imaginations. 2 weeks later, the listing was gone, completely removed. No explanation. I've never stayed in another Airbnb. I don't think I ever will. And sometimes at night, I think about that chair, about who moved it while we were sleeping, about why they angled it toward the hallway, about how long they'd been sitting in it, about what they were waiting for.